Welcome to the fight game. He's Icewater, I'm Puma, and this fight game is a special fight game. We're going to be talking about the career of Joe Frazier. Now, Joe Frazier really kind of didn't get a lot of love from a lot of people, and I remember coming up, either you follow Joe Frazier or you follow Muhammad Ali. And I was a Muhammad Ali guy, but I always had respect for Joe Frazier because Muhammad Ali, even though he bragged and talked, he had a lot of respect for Joe Frazier as a fighter and as a man. And some people say, Ice, that they didn't ever make amends, or Joe Frazier never forgave Muhammad Ali for what Muhammad Ali said, calling him Uncle Tom and all this other stuff. But I read somewhere where they did make amends and became not really close friends, but they became friends and they really respected each other. I don't know what you heard, but before we get to the stats, what were your thoughts about when we were going to do this show about Joe Frazier, and now your thoughts doing your research about Joe Frazier?
Well, first of all, my thoughts originally was the fact that a lot of people didn't know who he was and how he never really got the credit of how good he really was because you mentioned with Ali. Because you think about what people don't understand is if you go back and you look at that heavyweight division during like in the late 60s, 70s, or throughout, that there was that division was so full of talent. And every night that you got into the ring, you had to bring it. And if you think I'm kidding, and what I really mean by this is you got to really think about this. That's the reason why Ali had no problem taking L. Every time he got in the ring, there was somebody waiting to give him a punch. So when you think about the guys like Ron Lyle, right? Jerry Corey probably might have been one of the greatest unsung fighters that people don't know about. Happened to be white, that was in there banging and doing all he could with these guys and only lost to the great ones. And the only kryptonite George Frazier had was George Foreman. But he was still always in the mix of top five heavyweights. Always. Because nobody else did to him what Foreman did. And even when Ali beat him, it was a brawl. It was brutal. It was war. And that's the toughness people don't understand about that. And then looking at the stats, I was even more impressed because of the fact that he only lost four fights. And you think about the four fights. Let's be sensible about this. 16 years fighting. You said four fights, right? He lost four fights.
Mm-hmm.
Two to George Foreman and two to Ali. Are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
Dude was amazing. That's when that hit me as soon as I saw that 32-4-1, four fights. Foreman, Ali. All the talent we just spent out there. Ernie Shavers, Ron Lyle, Jimmy Ellis, Bob Foster, Jerry Corey. So many others out there that were top notch. Ken Norton, all these other guys. Four fights to two of the greatest boxing fighters in boxing history. And we don't give him the love that he deserves. Instead of that Rocky statue, I ain't mad at y'all. You damn sure better make sure if you have the Joe Frazier, you need to go down there and polish it now because he was that damn good.
Yeah, from Beaufort, South Carolina, but he lived in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He was the fighter of the year in 1967, 1970, and 1971, and the Boxing Writers Association of America named him the fighter of the year in 1969, 1971, and 1975. And he was ranked with the ring as the eighth greatest heavyweight champion. And people kind of liken his style to Henry Armstrong or Rocky Marciano. When I started looking at his fights again, because I always watched the Ali Frazier fights because those are just classic fights that you can watch all the time. And you're right, it's a war. You can see the bobbing and weaving and the relentless pressure that he would put on fighters. That's why it was so surprising that George Foreman could take him out like in two fights, like just immediately, because he was just coming to George Foreman and George Foreman was just dropping those bombs. But as he was coming to Ali couldn't keep him off him. He could not keep him off him. He was jabbing, hitting him with everything he had. And this is how much I knew that Ali respected Joe Frazier is that, when the last fight they had, they ended it at the 14th round. And Ali said, that's as close as dying as I ever came in my entire life. And even Pacheco, Dr. Pacheco, was like, we didn't want to send them out there because these guys, they're putting their lives on the line in that 15th round if they went out there. But Joe couldn't get up. Eddie Futch said, nope, that's it. We're not going anymore. I love you, as a man, you could go on, walk on, you can live, but both corners knew that those guys went in a 15 round. Both of them might have died. One of them might have died in the ring, and the other might have died soon after because, like you said, it was a war. He was an Olympic champion who won the gold in Tokyo in 1964 as a heavyweight. Wasn't that tall of a fighter? He was 5'11" and a quarter, but he had a 73 and a half inch reach, which is not really long. And then I read something else that I brought to you that when he was a kid, he was being chased by a 300-pound family hog, and he injured his left arm. He could never straighten that left arm again. So he's fighting with a little bit of a deficit. But like you said, 32 wins, 4 losses, 1 draw, 27 knockouts. In that heavyweight division, it was loaded. For him to do that with all the deficits, being short, not having the full reach, um, I got to put some more respect on him because, as I said earlier, I was an Ali guy. So you were an Ali guy, didn't like Joe Frazier, but man, I mean, what he was able to do in his career was sheer will, gut, and perseverance.
Very much so. I'll make two quick points. One of the points is you mentioned what kind of man he was. A lot of people don't know if you look really deep into the story. When Muhammad Ali got banned, he had issues where he couldn't make money because he was a fighter. And then with the war going on, he was catching hell and he was going through some very difficult times. Joe Frazier met with him, and Joe Frazier actually offered him and gave him money to make sure that his family was going to be okay. Now, for all of the monkey comments and everything that he talked about that man, deep down inside, I really believe Muhammad Ali respected and admired that man because not too many people were coming with cash for Ali back then. And Joe Frazier did. He took care of him, make sure, with all of the drama, he says, I know you just running your mouth, but you need this. I'm gonna make sure that you don't want for anything. And that's a man. And besides all of the stuff and all of the shenanigans, Ali needed help, and Joe Frazier helped him. In regards to the boxing thing, uh, his attributes 32 4-1, as you mentioned, 27 by knockout. But check this out. Ali's he had 60% KO ratio of all the fights. He had 60% percentage, which means 60% of those fights, Ali knocked somebody out. Joe Frazier was 73% KOs. The only one higher than that is Foreman. Foreman had 84% knockout rate. And if you stood up, which made what Ali did and being able to survive with Foreman even more amazing. But to be able to do that, not only are you smaller than most guys, you have a style that's not really conducive to fighting some of these bigger guys because you're all up under, you're in their chest. You have your forehead, if you can, right there on their chest, and you're swinging with these left hooks and right hooks and things of that nature. And you're imposing your style or your will on these guys. And that's where I think people missed the boat because he was rugged. He wasn't the most prettiest man in the world. But when you got in the ring and you saw what he was able to do, and the stats even make it even more appealing to real boxing fans, that you had to get excited about Joe Frazier. Because what we just talked about, he was doing this at a time when the heavyweight division was probably one of the most talented, the most difficult ever. I mean, ever. That many people coming through. I mean, Ali, Ken Norton, Broken Jaw, Ernie Shavers, all these guys. Joe Frazier fought Ali 3 times. Who does that? And they were classics 3 times. So I guess the thing that I'm just looking at is for him to, and he was an Olympic champion. And he's just a really hard-working guy that from down south but made his way up to Philadelphia. He is the epitome of what they say Philadelphia boxing was that you see now. Just a tough dude. And I wish for him he had received more accolades, but Ali was such an alarming figure. He was so big, bigger than life. I was an Ali guy too, that it was hard to kind of pick anything else up after that because Ali just illuminated. And people loved Ali. It was hard to fight that. But I said it before and I'll say it again that I think he deserves more credit. We need to watch more of him. We need to give him more kudos. But if I, in a fantasy world, and maybe I'll get on one of those games or whatever video games, I still wanted to see one fight with Joe Frazier, one fight, so he could show the world who the hell he really was. In the fantasy world, I have one fight I would want to see, and I believe this, and I said it again, I said it again. He would show the world how bad his was.
And that fight, I know who the fight is. So you want to let everybody know what that fight would be?
Mike Tyson versus Joe Frazier.
Yeah, I would love to see that fight. I would have loved to see that fight. And it has to be a fantasy world. But I'm going to repeat this again. His left arm could not straighten out, but what was his most lethal weapon? The left hook. And in those fights with Ali, Ali couldn't stop the left hook. And it was shorter than the right hook, but he used that left and he couldn't extend it, but he always seemed to be able to land that left hook. And so that was his lethal weapon, that left hook. It knocked Ali down. It cost him the fight of the century. Ali falling to the ropes and wondering where he was. And so that left hook, the deficit was his strength, his power. So I don't want people to kind of, you know, just breeze over that. The deficit he had was his left arm he couldn't straighten his left arm, but he used that left arm with the most lethal weapon he had was that left hook. God.
Tough guy. I mean, like you said, that's why I would love to see the Tyson fight because he's matching Tyson right with everything he likes to do. Tyson likes to be inside. Tyson likes to throw, up and under and all this and that. And Joe Frazier had a hell of a fight uppercut as well. I would love to see Mike Tyson in his prime fight against a guy that's putting his forehead right where Mike Tyson is. Two bulls coming at it, and maybe Frazier was like the epitome of what Tyson was trying to become. We never really saw it because it was always uh, crowded when he fought. We really had a chance to really dissect and see Frazier in his best. If you took Joe Frazier and you put him in a different time, particularly modern day, you thought Mike Tyson was going to be amazing. Imagine this dude. He beat the greatest of all time. He beat Ali soundly the first time. Soundly. So you put him in here with some of these other, oh man. Wrong place, wrong time. But I mean, history is what it is. It's beautiful. He did what he did. But if you were to take him and drop him somewhere else and later, whoo, I could see him dropping people like bad habit.
Yeah. So if you haven't done your research on Joe Frazier, I know there's some Muhammad Ali. He's bigger than life. I understand that. I'm a Muhammad Ali guy. But it took me a while to kind of get to Joe Frazier and watching his fight and looking at all his accomplishments. Do some research, watch some video on Joe Frazier, and you'll see that, he is second to none. He is one of the greatest fighters of all time. And I'm not even going to compare him to Muhammad Ali or anybody else. You just watch for yourself and see what he was able to do with the skills and the body that he had to a lot of great fighters in that boxing heavyweight era. I'm gonna let you have the last word on this, man.
It's all about the left hook, man. It's about the left hook, bro. All about the left hook. I just, just seeing how great he was at that size and that stature. Um, I love finding out new information, and I found out a lot here. and that makes me even more excited when I talk about a guy like this because he deserved better. But since we can't go back in time and give him his flowers, then we can move forward to let people understand about his greatness and why he should be understood to be one of the greatest heavyweights. They said number 8.
I don't think so.
Oh no, he might be a little bit higher in my opinion, but that's just to each his own. It's not always about the stats. Again, he only lost 4 fights, 32 4-1, 2 to Foreman, 2 to Ali.
Yeah, and you got to give him his love. He beat who they call the greatest of all time. So you got to give him his love. Got to give him his love. He's Icewater. I'm Puma, and this is a fight game.